You know how our parents keep telling us we're addicted to our phones and the internet? Well, welcome to their dream in anime form. To put it simply, internet-addicted Coomers and shut-ins get kidnapped, beaten the bollocks out of, and put through a boot camp from hell to turn them into people capable of touching grass. This is the story of our MC, Hibiki, and how he survives being thrown into this camp. As we watch on, a young man named Hibiki spends hours upon hours wasting away at a gaming cafe, pouring all his time into being a complete loser. Eventually, however, he notices something's off, and before he knows it, he falls unconscious without any warning. When our mouth breather of an MC finally wakes up, it's to find himself in a sealed-off room with several other young men his age. Of course, being the totally delusional and brain-rotted loser that he is, Hibiki's mind somehow goes straight to thinking he's in an isekai scenario, and he makes an utter fool of himself in front of the others. Then, as the others are listening for any change in the environment, a metal gate slides open and a bunch of soldier-looking dudes march in, escorting what can only be described as the dommiest of mommies. The sadistic lady tells the boys that they're at Elite Re-Education Academy, a recycling facility for trash, and she is Jean, the headmistress. While the academy's existing students are put through hell outside and beaten bloody for wanting rest, an anomaly lies atop the building's roof, reading through the files of the newest admissions. Back in the sealed room, one of the boys decides to act tough and flex his in-game followers of all things to pressure the adults to let him out. His empty bravado inspires an equally moronic cockiness in another of the boys too, but that's put to rest pretty fast when the head soldier or instructor proceeds to beat him black and blue for his arrogance. As the other boys watch the abuse, they realize that this is their reality now, something which hits our MC especially hard considering his earlier belief. The head instructor, Shion, has the boys line up and does roll call after Jean leaves. During this, he reveals to our MC that he's actually forbidden from all contact with the outside because his mother specifically requested that he be quarantined here till he turns 18. While he's in a state of denial, Shion grills him over how he was ogling Jean earlier, and no matter what answer our MC gives, he gets used as a punching bag. After being blasted with a hose and forced into the standard uniform, the boys are given a rundown of their daily routine, during which our MC realizes just how absolutely screwed his current situation really is. As the rest of the group goes on, Hibiki slips away and races to the building's roof, because plot, I guess. Even he doesn't know what he's doing or where he'll go if he escapes this place. Because the more he remembers what low IQ he's shown to his mom, the more he realizes she is, in fact, the one who had him sent here. With that realization, when he finally makes it to the roof and sees just how massive this place's campus is, our MC decides to yeet himself off the building and end things here and now. Meanwhile, the instructors downstairs have realized that Hibiki has run off and begin searching for him to administer punishment. On the roof, Hibiki's enchanted dumbness is moments away from taking the plunge when a highly amused voice speaks up from behind him, revealing another student in the same uniform as himself. Rather than being concerned, he treats the whole thing as a joke, encouraging Hibiki to at least land on one of the instructors so he doesn't go down alone. As Hibiki backs away in fear and nearly falls off, the new guy grabs him, saving his life while continuing to encourage his poor attempt at seppuku. Eventually, the reality of the situation hits our MC like a train wreck, and he comes to his senses, telling the other guy that he wants to live. After pulling Hibiki back onto solid concrete, the new guy tells him to become his underling and gain meaning in his life in return. Only then will he turn Hibiki into a real man. Ayo, pause? Being the socially inept and chronically online idiot that he is, our MC takes this completely the wrong way, first thinking his savior is a woman, and then cowering in fear of being made a prison bitch. In response, the other guy smacks the silly right out of Hibiki and explains that no, that's not what's going on here. Strangely enough, he proceeds to hand over a pair of binoculars and tells the MC to pick out whichever of the female students he likes, and they'll be sent to him. Ominous undertone aside, Hibiki ends up spotting his middle school crush, who he can't believe is one of the students in a place like this. Afterwards, Hibiki and his new master, Shin, head downstairs, where they are discovered by Xian and his goons. To our MC's extreme surprise though, Shin seems to have some kind of pull in this place, as his claim that Hibiki is now his lackey is enough to get the instructors to back off. As the two boys leave without a scratch from the instructors, Hibiki breaks out into shocked giggles upon finding someone so incredible. After heading out onto the grounds where the rest of the student body is, Shin tells Hibiki to hang back and goes to speak to a huge thug of a boy named Wudo. When Shin returns after speaking to the big guy, Wudo heads over to a seemingly random girl and proceeds to pull some pretty, well, let's just say it's some super inexcusable stuff. Not only does he rip open the girl's top and steal a phone she's managed to smuggle in, but he even has her held under threat of a strip search, all thanks to his authority as a discipline officer. Before things can truly go too far though, the very girl our MC remembers from middle school, Shiori, steps in and holds Wudo at knife point to let the girl go. As it turns out, Shiori is the student council president for this hellhole. Something she displays without hesitation as she floors the absolute bollocks out of one of Wudo's men when he tries attacking her. When another one tries the same, Hibiki decides to actually do something useful for once and steps in to shield her from a rock. As instructors arrive on the scene to break things up, Shiori helps up the other girl and, upon recognizing Hibiki, tells him to come to the infirmary with her so she can patch him up. Meanwhile, a staff meeting shows head instructor Xian being roasted by his peers for being late to the meeting all because of some new kid. Over at the infirmary, Shiori starts treating the wounds on our MC's face, and the two begin to talk about everything that happened. Unfortunately, Hibiki's shut-in Coomer nature shines through before long, and Shiori threatens to neuter his sorry butt for popping a boner at a time like this. Deciding to try and put that bullshit out of her mind altogether, Shiori turns to the girl she saved and tells her she wants to discuss terms for a trade. The girl tries her best to play to Shiori's conscience and have her get her phone back, but Shiori has no interest in playing the hero. Instead, she offers to teach the girl knife skills in exchange for smuggling in another phone for her. Long story short, those negotiations don't last long and she turns to leave. That is, until our moron of an MC opens his fat mouth and starts yapping like no tomorrow about how Shiori's better than this. She don't know you like that, little bro. Just then, Shin shows up to the room from where he was eavesdropping and reveals he has the phone. As both Shiori and the other girl demand it, Shin tells them that the condition for getting the phone is to spend some time with Hibiki and make him a man, if you catch my drift. The girl who the phone belongs to doesn't hesitate for even a second before trying to get into Hibiki's pants with an obviously fake and overplayed good girl persona. Unfortunately, the MC's brain is full of more holes than Swiss cheese, and he's not thinking with that part of his body anyway. Despite meaning to side with Shiori as an old friend, he gives in to the thought instantly, yet again showing how pathetic he really is. Unfortunately for his chances of finally getting laid, Shin reveals that this was just a ploy from him to reveal the true nature of this girl, June. He then proceeds to dox the ever-living bollocks out of the girl and exposes the ridiculous set of circumstances that landed her here, all stemming from her being a thirsty H-word. Between that and learning that Shin is the one who set Wudo on her, June tries to attack Shin only to get her top ripped open by Shiori and forced to flee. With the slag gone, Shin and Shiori have a short argument, which ends with the boy telling the student council president to consider his earlier offer if she really wants the phone. With that, he tosses Hibiki some protection for his phallic night and buggers off. With only Hibiki and Shiori left in the room, the MC has a whole darn debate with his own personal angel and devil about what he should do here. Thankfully, his decency as a human being wins out for once, and he tells Shiori that he doesn't want her to force herself to do this. That comes a tad late though, as the girl has already prepared herself and tosses him onto a makeshift bed so they can do the nasty. Being not very bright as he is, having never known the touch of a woman, Hibiki all but shoots his load the second Shiori puts his hand on her melons. Unfortunately, the moment doesn't last long, as even just touching someone as vile as our MC makes Shiori gag and borderline vomit like no tomorrow. Despite her repeated attempts to go through with the act, The girl only ends up making herself sicker and pukes straight into Hibiki's mouth. Eventually, even Hibiki hits his limit and talks her down from what she's doing. Becoming a man be damned, this is just disgusting for them both at this point. Perhaps some people just aren't meant to get any. Outside, Shin stands against the door with a smirk on his face as he listens to the proceedings like a total freak. Luckily for our all but brain-dead MC, Shiori actually appreciates his willingness to spare her from Shin's demands. After making some brief references to their shared past, revealing that Hibiki was once a track and field star at school, the MC tells Shiori that he'll earn her trust the hard way. Quite literally. In order to provide proof of their actions to Shin, Hibiki takes the rubber he provided and proceeds to choke his chode into it. The only problem with that is that his brain's so utterly dependent on the internet that he can't jerk it off to imagination alone. Upon hearing Shiori have basically no faith in him to even do this properly, Hibiki comes up with a workaround. Spotting some white stuff on the ground nearby, don't ask me what the hell it is, he stuffs that into the rubber and prepares to show it to Shin as the proof. Before leaving the room, Shiori tells Hibiki that though he may be an utterly detestable perv, she can appreciate that he's at least as kind as ever. With a promise to defend him from any bullies, she heads out, taking the phone from Shin as she does. As for our MC, he's practically on cloud 9 after getting on good terms with his crush. When Shin walks in, Hibiki shows him the filled up rubber to prove they fulfilled his condition. Then, in a move utterly lacking any self-awareness, Hibiki tries to lecture Shin on morality and the wrongness of his actions. Naturally, Shin decides to slam him into a wall and remind him of his place as the boy's minion and nothing more. When he demands that Hibiki call him master, the boy's had enough and rushes off while claiming that they have nothing to do with each other from now on. Unbeknownst to him, his actions were all predicted by Shin beforehand. After fleeing from Shin and facing the verbal bullying of the student body for being a new guy, Hibiki heads to his assigned dorm. Much to his surprise, the guys there actually seem pretty decent, from the dorm head to his roommates themselves. They throw him a pretty nice welcome party, all things considered, and even tell him they'll handle all his tasks involving moving in. All he has to do is go get them some awesome food. After all, he's Shin's underling, so he should be able to get that without any trouble. Of course, they don't realize that Hibiki made the absolutely brain-dead decision to not stay on good terms with Shin, so when he returns to the dorm with the same pathetic free food that everyone gets, the dudes aren't really happy. It seems like the trio is about to jump Hibiki and turn him into a bloodstain, but to Hibiki's shock, a single push from him knocks all three of them down. And of course, instead of trying to find a logical explanation for this, he instantly jumps to the conclusion that he's unlocked some kind of superpower. Seriously, how delusional can you even get? After he determines that that isn't actually the case via almost breaking his hand on the wall, our MC realizes what actually happened. It isn't that he's especially powerful, his roommates are just so severely malnourished that they can barely stand on their own strength. Hell, even their faces are sunken in when they wipe off the makeup their dorm head told them to put on. Said dorm head is actually responsible for their current state, taking all their allowance as a protection fee and constantly having them run errands and stuff for him. Upon hearing this and how desperate they are, Hibiki's shocked to see there are actually people in the world even more pathetic than himself. I mean, that's debatable, but sure. Still having zero self-awareness, Hibiki decides to pay the dorm head a visit and scold him for his actions, as if that's going to achieve jack squat. Walking into the staff room, he not only finds the man freely playing an online game, he also gets a verbal lashing for trying to act all high and mighty after just getting here. After being threatened with a fate worse than death if he keeps this up, Hibiki's sent to the athletic field for the day's training. There, he joins up with his roommates who don't hesitate to hit him with the good old "I told you so." Seeing Hibiki still trying to act upbeat, his roommates are quick to tell him that he needs to take this seriously if he wants to survive. Something that's demonstrated quite clearly by the events of the next few moments. A random student is beaten by Xian for practically no reason and assigned an unreasonable physical punishment, after which the head instructor starts announcing the school rules for all the new students. They get up at 7, they train, they turn in at 9. Anything they're told to do, they have to do. If they don't, they get thrown into solitary. They have class once a week, but other than that, it's nothing but this training. As the bottom feeders of society, they are here whether they like it or not, and they must do whatever Xian tells them to. With that announcement made, the head instructor puts the student body through some of the most gruesome drills possible, forcing them to perform all kinds of exercises to the point of utter exhaustion. While Hibiki is able to make it through most of this pretty easily, his roommates aren't nearly as capable, especially in their condition. Naturally, the three collapse before long, prompting Xian to start beating them. For better or worse, though mostly the latter, Hibiki refuses to accept this and stands up for the others. From there, a confrontation occurs between the MC and the head instructor, one which only escalates more and more with time, and Hibiki's insistence that he's in the right and the school is in the wrong here. Despite Xian's harsh words and beating, Hibiki continues to insist on how wrong the school and its system are. Unfortunately for him, when he calls out to rally the others, nobody answers him, all of them already cowed into submission. As the situation gets worse and worse for Hibiki, Shiori suddenly shows up on the scene and, putting on a front, beats Hibiki to the ground. Then, with the MC lying face down, Shiori gets on her knees as well and pleads with Xian to excuse the newbie's insolence this one time, while promising that she won't let this happen again. Unfortunately, of all the times he could decide to have some balls, Hibiki chooses now, still angrily refusing to acknowledge Xian and his system as anything but evil. When Shiori tries to hold him back, he even pushes her away, causing her phone to fall out of her pocket and exposes her to Xian. After that, things only get worse, with the head instructor now having the rest of the students and Shiori beaten in Hibiki's stead until he apologizes. Seeing the others suffer because of him, it doesn't take Hibiki long to crack, but the damage is done by then. The rest of the student body holds nothing but contempt for the boy who forced them to be beaten needlessly, and they make that known by straight up spitting on him as they leave the field. Afterward, with even Shiori abandoning him, Hibiki is left alone in the rain, pounding his fists into the earth with rage at his situation. That's the scene Shin walks onto, taunting Hibiki for his choices and their consequences. As he looks at Shin, Hibiki makes up his mind and bows down, begging the other boy to make him his dog after all. Shin isn't one to just let another person make such decisions though, and he tells the MC that if he wants that deal now, he'll have to fulfill 3 conditions. For starters, he must become his class's leader. Second, he must oust Wudo from his position as a disciplinary officer and take his place. As for the final condition, that's a secret for now. Later on, back in the first-year class's dorm, the other students are ordering Hibiki's roommates to beat him up when the boy in question bursts in and declares that he's their leader from now on. As you'd expect, the lot of them break down into laughter at first, but out of nowhere, Hibiki pulls out a whole sack filled with all kinds of delicious junk food and promises them more if they accept him as their leader. Almost before he can even finish that sentence, they're already on board, and Shin's first condition is fulfilled. Next, our MC makes a beeline for Wudo's dorm room. After busting down the door, Hibiki uses the shock factor of his entrance to blindside the fatty and get a punch-in on his face. With the thug enraged, it's easier than ever for Hibiki to lead him and his goons on a wild goose chase all over the school grounds. That is, until they reach a narrow opening between 2 buildings that he squeezes through, forcing the thugs to all go after him one by one. This is where Hibiki's plan pays off. Using his jacket as a makeshift sack, he fills it with bricks and proceeds to bash in the head of every thug that comes through. This is something he came up with while speaking to Shin earlier. He may not be the strongest physically, but using his stamina from his time as a track and field athlete, and his brains, he's able to outsmart all these idiots and bring them to their knees. Even when one of Wudo's goons does grab Hibiki, he can't hold on to the boy because of how fast he is and how slippery the rain's making him. After bashing in that guy's head as well, Hibiki poses up and emotes on Wudo with a thumbs down full of contempt before checking his watch. Whatever the last stage of his plan is, it's not far off now. What could the third criteria be for becoming Shin's lackey? And will Hibiki manage to reconnect with his middle school crush? We'd love to hear your predictions, so share them with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. Your support means a lot to us and helps us keep creating. See you in the next one! After cooking up his plan to take down Wudo, Hibiki wastes no time putting it into action. He heads straight to Wudo's room, swaggering in like he owns the place, and starts mouthing off, mocking Wudo and his gang. Naturally, this pisses them off to no end, so they chase after him like a pack of rabid dogs. But Hibiki's not stupid. He's got a plan, and he's sticking to it. He leads Wudo's goons on a wild goose chase through the dorms, picking them off one by one like it's a frickin' video game. Eventually, he lures Wudo alone into the dormitory. And then BAM! Bean slams the dormitory doors shut right at 9 p.m. sharp, locking Wudo's lackeys outside. Wudo, of course, is unfazed, thinking he can handle Hibiki on his own. But oh man, how wrong he is. Hibiki just smirks as one by one his own crew emerges from the shadows, ready to dish out some long overdue payback. Wudo finally realizes he's been played like a fiddle, and before he can even process what's happening, Hibiki's gang is all over him, beating him down like a stray mutt, while his own lackeys are stuck outside, helplessly watching their boss get his comeuppance. Meanwhile, Jun's pulling off her own side quest, seducing Ryo, one of the instructors, to get her precious phone back. Ryo, being a typical simp, rushes to Shion the next morning begging for the phone, claiming it's his duty to take care of such things. During the morning assembly, Hibiki makes his big move, dramatically revealing a stash of cell phones to Shion. He spins a wild tale about how Wudo, the so-called discipline officer, has been running a black market phone operation right under Shion's nose. Hibiki plays the repentant sinner perfectly, claiming he only did it because he was inspired by Shion's teachings and his classmates' support. And of course, Shion buys it, hook, line, and sinker, beating the crap out of Wudo and throwing him into the hole for a week. But while Shion's all smiles with Hibiki, giving him a pat on the back and praising him for repenting, things are heating up elsewhere. Turns out, one of the students, Moku, pulled a runner and tried to escape back home. Naturally, the headmistress isn't too pleased, and takes it out on Shion with a whipping session that Ryo can only dream of joining in on. Ryo, now with Wudo in his sights, decides to exact his own twisted revenge. He tells Wudo that he's been set up by Hibiki, but instead of helping him, he orders the guards to give Wudo a thorough beatdown before dragging him off for more punishment at Shion's hands. Jun meets up with Ryo afterward, only to complain that the phone she got wasn't hers. Realizing he's been played, Ryo swears to get back at Shion for this slight. Meanwhile, Shin and Hibiki are having a little chat. Shin's impressed with Hibiki's performance and invites him to his room, a ridiculously luxurious setup that leaves Hibiki wondering who the hell Shin really is. Shin reveals his third and final condition: taking down Namio, the Class 6 leader, another phone trader like Wudo. He explains how the instructors are in on the illegal trades, making bank off the students' desperation, and how they couldn't care less about losing a pawn like Wudo. Shin lays it out for Hibiki. If he wants to rise up the ranks, get Shion's trust, and finally earn some respect, he needs to snitch on all the traitors. That's the only way he'll ever get anywhere in this messed up place. At first, Hibiki hesitates, thinking he's already done enough. But Shin quickly shuts that down, pointing out that without real power, he'll always be treated like garbage, even by Shiori. It's either rise to the top or stay a loser forever. With Shin's promise of help, Hibiki reluctantly agrees to the plan. Hibiki then shares the plan with his roommates, but they're not having it. They're tired of risking their necks and figure if they just toe the line, they'll be out in a year. Hibiki, furious at their cowardice, tells them to keep being losers and storms off, quitting as their leader. On the flip side, Ryo's got his own suspicions about Shin and Jun's phone. He decides to confront Shin directly, choking him out and demanding answers. this school's power plays are far from over. So, right when things are about to get ugly, Shin's bodyguard swoops in like some kind of martial arts ninja, ready to mess up anyone dumb enough to lay a hand on his boss. This guy doesn't mess around either. He's got the green light from the headmistress herself to go full-on Bruce Lee on anyone who so much as thinks about hurting Shin. Ryo, who was probably feeling a little too confident a moment ago, suddenly finds himself facing a real-life wrecking ball. But Shin, ever the smooth talker, waves off his bodyguard and plays the victim card like a pro. He looks Ryo dead in the eye and says, "Hey man, I just want to live in peace. I don't have the phone anymore. I gave it to Hibiki, I swear." Whether Ryo buys this or not, he's not getting anywhere with Shin right now, so he has to back off. But you can tell from his face that this isn't over. Meanwhile, somewhere else on this prison-like campus, the leaders of Class 18, Akane and Hoku, decide it's time to pay Shiori a little visit. They've got a proposition for her, and it's not one she can easily ignore. See, Shiori's got a lot of sway in Class 19, and these two want her to unite all the girls' classes under one banner. Power in numbers, right? But Shiori's not one to just agree to anything. She's smart, she knows the value of what they're asking for. So she straight up refuses until Akane pulls out the big guns. She whips out a device that, believe it or not, actually has an internet connection. And get this, Akane's telling Shiori that she could finally use this thing to get in touch with her little brother. Of course, Shiori's immediately suspicious. How does this chick even know about her brother? That's some pretty personal info. Akane, smirking like she's just played the winning hand, explains that hacking is kind of her thing. She's dug deep into the school's database, poked around in places she shouldn't, and yeah, she even managed to crack into the police data system. She's not just making empty promises, she knows exactly who Shiori is and what she cares about. She even spills the tea about how Shiori's parents are dead and how her little brother Shu is stuck in some hospital's coronary care unit, room 13 on the 8th floor to be exact. This isn't just a pitch anymore, it's a full-blown power move. Shiori, clearly impressed but trying not to show it, says she'll join forces with them, but only if they can get her a working phone. Akane, never one to leave a negotiation without a twist, admits that she doesn't have a working phone right now. But she's got the next best thing, a device that can track down any phone with an active internet connection. All they have to do is find it and take it from whoever's got it. Shiori's intrigued but doesn't fully commit. There's still a lot to consider. While this is going down, Hibiki's busy getting jumped by Wudo's underlings who are looking for some payback. But Hibiki's not exactly playing by the rules here. He starts beating himself up, literally, spraying ketchup all over like it's a scene from a horror flick, and then he starts screaming bloody murder about how he'll never betray Instructor Shion by joining them or smuggling phones. It's a bizarre strategy, but hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. And right on cue, Shion shows up, looking like he's ready to dole out some justice. Seeing the mess Hibiki's made of himself, Shion assumes the worst about Wudo's gang. Just as Shin planned, Shion traps them all, punishing Kon, the ringleader, by throwing him into the hole for 3 days, while the rest of the crew doesn't get to eat that day. It's a classic Shin move, using others to fight his battles while he keeps his hands clean. But Hibiki isn't done playing his own game. Once Shion's out of earshot, he turns to Wudo's boys and offers them a deal they can't refuse. He tells them that Kon was his only target, and if they switch sides and join him, he'll hook them up with all the luxury food they could ever want. Predictably, they're on board, because who wouldn't trade a doomed leader for a chance at some decent grub? With his new crew in tow, Hibiki wastes no time asking about Class 6's operation. They tell him that Class 6 handles their shady business behind the dorm in the second-class building, which immediately raises red flags for Hibiki because Shin had told him it was happening in the dining hall. Something smells fishy, and it's not the cafeteria food. His new allies warn him to steer clear of Class 6 because their leader, Yo, is no joke. He's strong and he's got no qualms about putting people in their place. But the real danger isn't Yo, it's their homeroom teacher, Ryo, who's got a reputation for not showing mercy to anyone who messes with his class. The more they talk, the more suspicious Hibiki becomes. Was Shin setting him up? The thought gnaws at him, especially when he hears that someone knew he'd be there at noon. That's how Wudo's boys managed to ambush him in the first place. Just as Hibiki's mulling this over, Shiori and the girls show up, making everything 10 times more awkward. It's painfully obvious that Hibiki and Shiori have some unresolved tension. They can't even make eye contact. Then, out of nowhere, Akane launches herself at Hibiki, practically tackling him as she blurts out a marriage proposal. Apparently, she's totally smitten by his looks, which, let's be real, is the most random thing to happen all day. But before Hibiki can even process this weird turn of events, Hoku steps in, demanding the phone that Wudo was smuggling. She knows Hibiki's got it now, and she's not messing around. She threatens to give him a pounding that a virgin like him supposedly needs, which of course gets all the boys riled up. They start begging for the same treatment because why not? This isn't just a confrontation anymore, it's a full-on circus. A fight breaks out, and it's absolute chaos. But Hoku's not just talk, she's a total powerhouse. She takes down all the guys, leaving only Hibiki standing. They press him hard, demanding the phone, threatening to make his life hell if he doesn't cough it up. And that's when Shin decides to make his grand entrance. He's got that smug look on his face like he's been orchestrating this whole mess from the shadows. Shiori, who's already on edge, loses it when she sees him. She's pissed about the phone he gave her, which turned out to be a dud with no internet connection. Shin, unfazed as usual, basically tells her it's her own fault for not checking it before they made the deal. Then, with the same sleazy confidence, he starts pitching his offer to the group. Join him, and they won't regret it. He points to Hibiki as his prime example, saying how much the guys achieved in just a few days, like beating Wudo and pulling off this latest stunt, all because he agreed to be Shin's lackey. Hibiki tries to back up Shin's claims, but Shiori isn't having it. She's disgusted, calling Hibiki out for being nothing more than a lapdog who's good at wagging his tail. She tells him to never speak to her again, and before anyone can blink, fists start flying. Realizing they're outmatched, Shin and Hibiki hightail it out of there with Hoku hot on their heels, but as they run, it becomes clear that this is all part of Shin's plan. They burst into the boys' bathroom, where they find themselves surrounded by a group of Class 6 boys, including Yo himself. Shiori and Hoku, tough as they are, get absolutely wrecked by Yo, who's on another level strength-wise. But when Yo starts going too far, especially with Shiori, Hibiki finally steps up. He demands answers from Shin, who casually explains that these are their new allies. Yo, the leader of Class 6, and Ban, the leader of Class 20. Apparently, they'd approached Shin earlier with a deal, and he accepted, bringing them into his twisted little circle. With a sickening grin, Shin orders Hibiki to take naked photos of the captured girls, planning to use them as leverage to keep the girls in line. Hibiki's stomach churns at the thought, but Shin's not giving him a choice. He reminds Hibiki of the last time he disobeyed, the time with Shiori, and warns him that defying him again will make him his worst enemy. Cornered and with no good options, Hibiki reluctantly agrees but negotiates to take a photo of only one of the girls. Shin agrees, but you can tell from his tone that he's just toying with Hibiki, testing how far he can push him before he breaks. This school's basically a cesspool of manipulation and betrayal, and as Hibiki prepares to cross yet another moral line, it's clear that the road ahead is only going to get darker. Hibiki, finding himself at yet another moral crossroads, decided he needed to make one last stand before things got too far out of hand. He wasn't about to let Shin's sick plan go off without a hitch, but he also wasn't foolish enough to confront Shin head-on. Not yet, at least. So he made a deal with the devil, promising Shin that he wouldn't let the girls defy him if he could guarantee their safety. But even as he was saying it, Hibiki was already thinking 3 steps ahead. He secretly hinted to the girls that he had something up his sleeve, a plan to get them out of this mess. When Ban grabbed Shiori, Hibiki knew it was time to act. He barked out that he couldn't undress her properly while she was being held like that, which was enough to make Ban loosen his grip, if only slightly. That's all Hibiki needed. In a flash, he threw his jacket over Ban's face, using the element of surprise to hold him down just long enough for Akane and Hoku to make a break for it. "Run, get the instructor!" Hibiki shouted, knowing full well that this would blow everything up. Akane and Hoku bolted, but Shiori, unfortunately, wasn't fast enough. Before she could get away, she was captured again, leaving Hibiki to face the music alone. Shin's face twisted in disappointment, but no surprise. He'd suspected Hibiki might pull something like this, but the kid had still managed to throw a wrench in his plans. Hibiki, defiant as ever, spat back that he'd never swear loyalty to someone as twisted as Shin. He'd known from the start that Shin was setting him up, and he wasn't about to be some puppet on a string. But before they could really get into it, Bean made his entrance, demanding to know what the hell was going on. Things only got worse when Ryo showed up, smirking like the cat that caught the canary. Ryo claimed he'd gotten a report that all the smuggled phones were stashed with Hibiki and wasted no time in pinning him down. As the pieces fell into place, Hibiki realized he'd been played. Shin had made a deal with Ryo, and now he was being thrown under the bus. With a cold, calculating look, Shin let Hibiki know the harsh truth. Ryo, the vice head instructor, was on his side now. Hibiki's stomach dropped as he finally understood just how deep Shin's betrayal went. His punishment came swiftly. Solitary confinement for 2 weeks, a punishment that might as well have been a death sentence in this place. And as if that weren't enough, the girls, his supposed accomplices, were slapped with an additional 5 kilometers of running every day and a month of scrubbing toilets. Before they dragged him away, Shiori managed to get close enough to hiss one final message. She wanted nothing to do with him from now on. Locked away in solitary, with nothing but his thoughts for company, Hibiki spiraled into a deep depression. But wallowing in self-pity wasn't going to get him anywhere, and he knew it. If there was one thing he'd learned in this hellhole, it was that only the strong survive. He vowed then and there to become the strongest, strong enough to never be betrayed again, strong enough to exact revenge on everyone who had wronged him. He didn't care if he had to sell his soul to do it. He would come out of this stronger, no matter the cost. Driven by this newfound resolve, Hibiki threw himself into training with an intensity that bordered on madness. Day and night, he pushed his body to the limit, working out relentlessly, as if sheer force of will could transform him into the unstoppable force he needed to be. His determination didn't go unnoticed. Shion, passing by his cell one day, couldn't help but be struck by Hibiki's relentless dedication. It reminded Shion of someone from his past, a memory he'd rather forget but couldn't escape. 7 years ago, Shion had been a cop, a role that had once filled him with pride but now only brought shame. He remembered the betrayal that had shattered his life, the time one of their own had sold them out, leading to a firefight with a gang that left everyone dead except for him. He'd been so paralyzed by fear during the battle that he'd wet himself, a moment of weakness he'd never lived down. His best friend had dragged him to safety, snapping him out of his stupor, but it had been too late to save the others. Instead of calling for backup, as his friend had instructed, Shion had hidden, too terrified to do what needed to be done. His cowardice had cost his friend his life. The memory of that betrayal had haunted Shion ever since. After the funeral, he'd gone to see his friend's wife, desperate to find some way to make amends. But she'd lashed out, blaming him for coming back alive while her husband was buried in the ground. Her bitterness was fueled by the loneliness that consumed her, with her children gone and no one left to care for. Shion's guilt had only deepened when he tracked down his friend's son, who had become hopelessly addicted to internet games. The boy hadn't even attended his own father's funeral, too lost in the digital world to care about the real one. When Shion confronted him, the boy's anger spilled over. He accused his parents of abandoning him, of not caring about the bullying he endured every day at school. He was always alone, forced to move from place to place because of his father's job, never able to make real friends. The rage and hurt finally took their toll, and the boy, malnourished and neglected, collapsed in front of Shion. He died shortly afterward, another casualty of a life ruined by circumstances beyond his control. At the boy's funeral, Shion had finally broken. He quit the police force, realizing that all his efforts had been for nothing. He couldn't even save his best friend, let alone make a difference as a cop. But his guilt wouldn't let him rest. He sought out his friend's daughter, hoping to find some way to atone for his failures. With the help of a contact, he eventually tracked her down, only to discover she had taken a dark path herself. The once innocent girl, had become the headmistress of a brutal re-education facility, selling her soul for power and money. Xian confronted her, hoping to save what was left of the girl he once knew. But he was too late. She was too far gone, plotting with a disgusting old man to further her own twisted goals. When the man suddenly suffered a heart attack, Xian watched in horror as Jin, his friend's daughter, coldly threw away the man's medicine, letting him die in front of her, without a second thought. Xian's patience was wearing thin as he stared at Jin, his anger bubbling to the surface. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped, the disbelief clear in his voice. Jin didn't flinch. With a chilling calm, she explained that she had married the old man just the day before, fully intending to kill him and take all his money. Xian felt like he'd just been sucker punched. This was the daughter of his best friend, a man who had died a hero in his eyes. How had she fallen so far? But Jin wasn't done. Xian's scolding only seemed to fuel her rage. "Murderer? You're calling me a murderer?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. In a heartbeat, she grabbed a whip, wherever she even got that from, who knows, and started lashing out at him like she'd lost all sense. "My father wasn't a hero," she screamed, each word punctuated by a crack of the whip. "He abandoned us for his precious job. Now he's dead, and I'm the one left picking up the pieces." Jin's words were a brutal slap of reality. She poured out years of resentment and pain, telling Xian how her father's so-called heroism had left their family in ruins. "I had to drop out of school because his job didn't pay enough," she ranted, the whip cracking in time with her fury. "He wasn't there when our mother got sick and ended up in the hospital because he was too busy playing the hero." As Jin's anger subsided, the story she told took an even darker turn. She revealed that she wouldn't be getting a penny from the old man she just killed. All the money would go to his ex-wife and child. "That's why I wanted to kill him," she spat bitterly, "for wasting my time." The only thing she got from the old man was his stock in a ruined school, a pretty pathetic consolation prize. Xian stood there, taking it all in, the guilt gnawing at him. He felt responsible for her father's death, for the life Jin had been forced to lead. So he did the only thing that made sense to him at that moment. He told her to hit him more. "Go ahead," he muttered. "It's the only time I feel at peace. It takes away my guilt." But Jin wasn't interested in indulging his self-pity. She saw an opportunity and seized it. With a twisted smile, she made him an offer. Serve her at the school, where she would be the headmistress, and he could work off his guilt by following her orders. Xian, desperate for redemption, agreed. And that's how he became the head instructor, sealing his fate in this twisted place. 2 weeks crawled by, and finally, Hibiki was let out of his cell. But something had changed in him, something dark and dangerous. His aura had shifted. There was a hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was no longer the boy who stumbled through plans and made mistakes out of naivety. This was a Hibiki who had decided to survive, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, Akane was in a whole lot of trouble. She'd bailed on her cleaning duty, and now every boy in the school was chasing after her, eager to catch her, to be rewarded by the instructors. As she sprinted through the halls, she collided with Moku, both of them tumbling to the ground. Moku, who was already on the boys' hit list for being annoyingly persistent, now found himself in just as much danger as Akane. And just when it seemed like they were both about to get pummeled, Hibiki showed up out of nowhere. With the cold precision of someone who'd spent the last 2 weeks plotting his every move, he beat the living daylights out of the boys chasing Akane and Moku, sending them scrambling for safety. Moku, in awe of Hibiki's strength, could barely believe his eyes. Akane, ever the opportunist, invited Hibiki to follow her so she could treat his wounds. But Hibiki should have known better than to trust her at face value. As soon as they were alone in the room, she locked the door behind them and immediately tried to concoct some sort of twisted plot with him. But before things could get any weirder, Hoku and Shiori burst in, ready to rescue Akane, only to find her in a rather compromising position with Hibiki. Without missing a beat, Hibiki stood up and, with a cold stare, challenged Hoku to a fight. His terms were simple. If he won, they'd have to work together with him on his escape plan. It was a bold move, but Hibiki wasn't playing around anymore. He was done with being pushed around. The next morning, at the assembly, Hibiki made a move no one saw coming. He called out for Shion and, in front of the whole class, put on the performance of a lifetime. He claimed that his time in solitary had been an eye-opener, that he'd reflected deeply on his sins and had vowed never to stray again. He swore from the bottom of his heart that he'd treat his classmates like brothers from that day forward, and he begged Shion for one more chance. The entire class watched, eyes wide, knowing full well this was all part of some bigger scheme. They all expected Shion to see right through Hibiki's act, to shut him down in an instant. But to everyone's shock, Shion bought it, hook, line, and sinker. He was actually proud of Hibiki, going so far as to tell the other students to follow his example. But the surprises weren't over. Just as Shion was basking in Hibiki's so-called repentance, the girls' class came marching toward them, led by their instructor, Cho. With a glint of challenge in his eyes, Cho called out Shion, proposing a little contest. Let the students fight each other to see which class had the better instructor. Never one to back down, Shion accepted the challenge. He quickly chose his fighter and the battle was on. But as soon as the fists started flying, it became painfully clear that the boys were no match for the girls. They were utterly demolished, with the girls taking them down one by one in a brutal display of strength. Shion's face turned to stone as he watched his students get their asses handed to them. His disappointment was palpable, and when it was all over, he laid down the law. No dinner for the boys that night. They'd lost, and now they were going to pay for it. But Hibiki wasn't about to let things end like that. Standing tall, he stepped forward and told Shion to let him have a go. He wanted to prove his repentance, not just with words, but with action, by defending his honor in the ring. The stakes had just been raised, and everyone knew it. This was no longer about punishment or redemption, this was about survival in a world where only the strong could make the rules. Hibiki didn't hesitate when it came to facing off against Hoku, the strongest fighter in the girls' class. But rather than charging in with brute force, he played a more devious game. Extending his hand for what appeared to be a friendly handshake, he used the moment to grope her chest, instantly igniting Hoku's fury. Enraged, she unleashed a relentless flurry of punches fueled by sheer anger. The crowd buzzed with whispers, most assuming Hibiki was just showing off. Cho, the girl's instructor, confidently predicted that Hibiki was setting himself up for a major beatdown. What no one realized was that Hibiki had planned this all along. He knew Hoku's rage would make her reckless, burning through her stamina in no time. His time in solitary had been all about building endurance, and he was ready to outlast her. As Hoku's punches slowed, her breathing became ragged. Hibiki seized his opportunity. He locked her in a tight hold, using his arms and legs to immobilize her. Exhausted and out of options, Hoku had no choice but to surrender, leaving Hibiki victorious. The crowd was stunned by his win, but Cho quickly labeled him a cheater. However, Shion shut down the complaint, asserting that Hibiki had played by the rules. He won, and that was all that mattered. Cho, unwilling to challenge Shion directly, begrudgingly accepted the outcome. The situation took another turn when Ryo arrived, mocking Shion's pride in defeating girls. He proposed a new challenge, pitting Hibiki against Yo, the top fighter from Class 6. Shion objected, noting the vast difference in experience between Yo and Hibiki, but Ryo's taunting made it clear that backing down wasn't an option. Sensing an opportunity, Hibiki suggested an endurance challenge instead of a fight, a simple test of who could stand still the longest without moving. Ryo agreed and the competition began. As the minutes turned into hours, most of the students struggled to stay upright, but Hibiki and Yo remained steadfast. By the third hour, Yo was visibly faltering while Hibiki stood strong, showing no signs of weakness. With Yo on the verge of collapse, Shion proposed calling the match a draw to prevent either from fainting. Ryo, concerned that Yo might lose, agreed. The match ended in a draw, but Hibiki had clearly proven his resilience. After the match, Shion, impressed by Hibiki's performance, ordered him to rest, but Hibiki knew better than to relax completely. Expecting a retaliation from Yo, he had Moku prepare buckets of cold and hot water. Sure enough, Yo and his underlings soon arrived, ready for revenge. As Yo entered the room, Hibiki threw the cold water at him, followed by the hot, causing Yo's muscles to seize up. With Yo incapacitated, Hibiki launched his counterattack, beating Yo down while easily handling his underlings. Meanwhile, Hibiki's classmates, expecting to find him defeated, were shocked to discover that Hibiki had turned the tables on Yo. Yo's underling, desperate to regain control, ordered Hibiki's classmates to join in the fight, but Hibiki offered them a different path: fight against Yo for their freedom. Moku, surprising everyone, was the first to act, taking down Yo's underling with a chair. Inspired by Moku's courage, the rest of the class rallied behind Hibiki, overthrowing their current leader Sei, who had tried to argue that siding with Yo would be safer. The class, now united under Hibiki's leadership, still had doubts about facing established fighters like Yo's crew. Hibiki, ever decisive, demonstrated his resolve by methodically breaking Yo's bones with a stick, making it clear that anyone who challenged him would meet the same fate. With that brutal display, Hibiki cemented his position as the new leader, making it clear that he was not to be trifled with, and that crossing him would lead to nothing but pain. And just like that, Hibiki's rise to power takes a dark and brutal turn. But where does he go from here? Will his newfound leadership last, or are there even greater challenges waiting in the shadows? And what will Yo's next move be after such a humiliating defeat? We'd love to hear your predictions. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're itching for more, let us know you're ready for part 3 by commenting revenge in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more intense recaps and breakdowns. See you guys in the next one.